everybody, welcome to Podhacks Only YouTube edition. This will either be the second or third episode. I have two episodes I'm working on pretty much at the same time. One of them, the terminology episode, which is this one, the script was already written. It just needed to be cleaned up because I did have a podcast version of this script and this show back on December 7th. It was actually episode 11 of the podcasting version. The other one I'm working on right now is the AL side of the playoffs from 2019. I had to write a script for that. I also have to record it for the podcast and then the show because there wasn't a former podcast episode of that. And yes, I am doing both a podcast and the YouTube version because this is still a podcast at its core. And if you get the time, please go check that out. It is Podhacks Only, same as it is here. You can just search that anywhere. I'm on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Overcast, Spotify, any of those things. And while you're there, if you want to subscribe and like, and maybe even leave a written review, especially on Apple Podcasts, that is more than appreciated. Same thing with here. Please like the video. Please subscribe if you will. It goes a long ways in helping grow the show and get it out to other people to see. I want to appreciate the support I've received so far, and I really do enjoy all the feedback that I've been receiving. And if you want to get in touch with me, if you don't already follow me or know me, I will have all of my information in the episode description. But I'm going to try to get through this quick. I don't want to make the YouTube videos very long, and I'm going to have to heavy edit this one. And as I'm saying, I'm working on two episodes at the same time. So this could be either episode 2 or episode 3. But welcome to Podhacks Only YouTube edition, and let's talk some baseball terminology. All right. Usually in the podcasting version, before we get started, I do lead off with kind of like an introduction, things of that sort. Sometimes even whip around the league. I'm gonna put it in episode 20 of the podcast, so I will have a whip around the league there, and I may put it while I'm recording the video as well. There's really not a whole lot of news going on right now, as baseball's still kind of out of commission for the time being with COVID-19 spreading throughout the country. The only real news that's happening is Chris Sale is in fact going to get Tommy John surgery, as is Noah Syndergaard. And Noah Syndergaard, his timetable, you're looking at late April, maybe even May of next year. So he's going to be out for quite some time. Really a big blow for the Mets and for baseball in general. But I'll touch on that a little bit more in the episode 20 of the podcast and episode 2 or 3, like I said, whatever the 5 AL team, the playoff side for 2019 is. I'll touch on that a little bit more whenever I get to that show. So let's just jump into this again. Baseball terminology. There is a wide array of terms that are used among players and among fans, and we're not going to touch them all here. It's just not going to happen. There's just too many of them. Many of them aren't used anymore. Many of them are new that I don't know yet. And again, there's just too much. There's also a lot of ones that are really vulgar or explicit language. I'm not going to use them here. With the podcast, I'm going to try to keep this as PG as I can, because I do want to spread baseball to everybody, and that's the point of making this, is for me to learn how to do these things and also spread the information to everybody that I can, so that everyone can listen to. We can start baseball conversations. People can start talking about things. They can learn about the sport that I've really enjoyed. It's brought a lot of joy to me, and it's my way of kind of giving back to it. So we're not going to cover those ones here. Terminology does come in 2 different sections, however. The first one is basic terminology, and if you know the sport already, this is going to be just kind of, you might want to skip it. I'll try to put the timestamp for both the basic and the stat side of it in the episode description with all my contact information, all that stuff. I'm also going to go through the basic side quicker than I am going to do the stat side. I'm not going to spend too much time explaining the basic side of it because it is the basic side. And I don't want to make these as long as I make the podcast episodes. The podcast may go an hour and a half. I want to keep the YouTube version at an hour, and if I go a little bit under that, that's okay, but my goal is to keep it right around an hour. So we're going to go through it a little bit quicker if it sounds a little bit more rushed than the podcast version. The podcast version doesn't have as much information. It has, 99% of the information. I just added a little bit of tweaks here and there, but I go in a little bit more depth. It goes a little bit longer. But we're going to get into it. We're going to jump into the basic one and try to get through this so we can get to the stats side of it, which is a little bit more advanced stuff. Okay, starting on the basic side, we're going to start with home runs. And home runs are if you hit the ball and it goes and leaves the park, You get to go around all 4 bases. That's a home run. You can also have an inside the park home run, also known as an inside the parker, where the ball doesn't leave the field, but you're able to get all the way around the bases and score without an error occurring, right? Because all these things, home run, single, double, triple, they all have to happen without an error happening or without the ball getting ahead. And a lot of these things, you can know the definition of them. Like, again, most people are going to know what I'm talking about when I say these things. But if you're still unsure, just pay attention to the box scores, or because every game has an official scorer who keeps track of these things and rules them a single, a double, right, or a hit or an error. Those things, they have a guy there to do so. So don't have to worry about it too much. I do encourage people, if you are trying to learn the game or you're trying to teach somebody the game, do a book, get a book, right, and keep the score that way. Go line by line, old school style. That's the way I kind of learned the game. I know a lot of people learn the game that way. My wife learned the game that way. She did the Little League box scores for years. It is a great way. And if you're wondering, you know, how many games aren't going on right now, how am I going to do that? Well, MLB.tv has put all the games from 2018 and 2019 up for free right now, so you can watch them whenever you want. Also on YouTube, and you can just Google it right above me, you can type in most any games, MLB full-length games, and they have over 100 games on here from past years beyond the 2018 season. So you can do that, put the game on. If you really, really want to learn the game of baseball, right? If that's your goal, to learn the game of baseball, teach someone the game of baseball, I always recommend just keeping a book or doing a book. And if you're wondering if people actually do go watch old games, yes, I am one of them. So that does happen. All right, but home runs come with a few different names. You have homers, you have dingers, you have bombs, bombas, jacks, going yaya, going yak, a shot, a blast, going deep, and then again, an inside the parker. And then you have an oppo taco, or going oppo. So if someone says they're going oppo, if you're a right-handed hitter, you pull into you go to the left, right? And that's what a pull hitter does. That's a pull. If you hit it to the other side of the field, right? From the other side of so you have home plate, you're on this side. If you hit it to that way, that is the opposite field of your pull side. That's what oppo is, right? If you hit a home run, you can call it an oppo taco. Singles would be next, and singles are known, again, it's a single base. So you hit the ball in play, an error doesn't occur, and you're able to reach first base safely, but just first base, not any other base. You get a single base. That could be a base knock. It's also a hit. So if someone gets a hit, they're referring to just a single, right? Because they'll say a double or a triple or a 2-bagger or 3-bagger if it's 2 bases, right, which is a double, or 3 bases if it's a triple, right, or just a home run if it's 4. And again, base knock, a knock, a Texas leaguer, which is a thing in its own, a C&I single, which is ones that just get past the infielder, right? The ball has legs. You have an infield hit. That's if the ball doesn't leave the infield and you still get a base hit, whether they had a range where they just kind of knock it down, but they have no play. If you beat the throw out, whatever happens in the infield, no error happened, but you reach first base safely on your own speed and placement of the ball. That's an infield hit. You also have a blooper, and that's just kind of it bloops over the fielder. So simple enough. Right, and those doubles, as I mentioned, doubles are 2 because you get double the amount of bases. It's also known as a 2-bagger, and a triple, you get third, right, triple the amount of bases. So it's a 3-bagger, and both of those can also be gappers. Same with inside the park home runs. And if you see someone say a gapper, well, you have, right, you have left, center, and right. And if the ball splits them, right, goes in between left and center, or splits between center and right, it goes in the gap or into the alley, and that is a gap or a shot into the alley. That's what they're referring to there. Hitters themselves come with different names. So you have a hitter that with power, which mostly power hitters come with different names, right? You have slap hitters and you have speedsters, and a speedster it's quick, and slap hitters are they're fast on the left-hand side and they just slap at the ball. You mostly see that in softball. You don't really see it much in baseball, outside of maybe some Japanese players like Ichiro or things like that. But 99% of slap hitters are in softball, not baseball. But softball, it's pretty important too. Power hitters are known as, again, power hitters because they hit a lot of home runs. They hit the ball hard, right? They have power. They're boppers. They could be bombers or Bronx bombers or baby bombers. If you're a Yankees fan, they use that a lot. Or you can also be mashers, right? Because they mash the ball. You can call them beasts, whatever. Just anything to resemble power, right? That's a power hitter, a home run hitter. That's what they are. Batters who are known to pull are pull hitters, as we've mentioned. They pull to their pull side. So if I'm right-handed, I'm pulling to left field. If I'm left-handed, I'm pulling to right field. I know it's opposite. It's because the way you look at it. Batters on deck are those that are next up to the plate. So you have the guy at the plate, and then you have the guy that's going to come up after him. He's on deck, and the guy after him is in the hole. So you got at bat, on deck, in the hole. And they just go 3 because you're only really guaranteed 3 batters per inning, and that's why. You have leadoff hitters and you have cleanup hitters. And a leadoff hitter is somebody that leads the game off. So you have a lineup, right? You go 1 through 9. That first batter of the day is your leadoff hitter. And then you have a cleanup hitter, and that's your 4th batter of the day. Because I mentioned you're only guaranteed 3. So your first batter is usually a guy with high on-base percentage, more of a contact hitter. He's not going to strike out a whole lot. He's going to put the ball in play and give himself a chance to get on. He's usually a little bit quicker. Your second and third hitter are probably your best 2 hitters, and they should be your best 2 hitters on your team, right? They can both hit with power and with contact. And your 4th hitter is more of a power hitter, and he's there. So if somebody gets on in those first 3 and it gets to him and nobody has knocked them in, they're there to clean up the mess and bring a run in, right? Or they have to start over the next inning and get things going again. So they're known as a cleanup hitter. A good hitter is known to rake. So if you hear someone that says they rake, that's because they're hitting really well. Or they can also possibly be on a streak. So if you're on a streak, same with a win streak, is because you hit in multiple games in a row. So if you hear someone with a 10-game win streak or hit streak, is because they've hit in 10 straight games. And some streaks can go all up to 20. Some of them could be 3, 4. But a 10-plus streak is a pretty good thing to have. Rake, you don't hear it as often, but when you have heard it recently, it's for pitchers who rake. And that's going to be kind of a moniker that's going to go away here soon enough. As news is 2021, next year will probably be the first year the NL introduces the designated hitter. And what a designated hitter is, it's someone that is designated to hit for the pitcher. Now, it doesn't have to be the pitcher that they're hitting for, but 99.999 times that designated hitter is going to hit for the pitcher, so the pitcher can just focus on hitting. Even with guys like Shohei Ohtani, or I think it's Adam McKay for the Rays, that can do both, you still, when they're pitching, you want them to focus on pitching. So you have somebody that's designated to hit for them, right? It's like a pinch runner. So it's a guy that comes in and runs for the pitchers, right? But the second they do run for that person in baseball, that person has to leave the game for good. So that person that's pitch running either has to stay in the game or be replaced in the next inning. You also have a pinch hitter. That's someone that comes in the game and hits for them, right? So on the NL side now, you have the pitchers hit, right? But when it comes time, right, they're getting ready to leave the game. It's in a close game, and you have somebody hit for them. You insert them to hit for them in that inning. They're known as a pitch hitter. So I guess because you put them in a pinch, I don't know. That's where that came from. Pitchers, though, although pitchers who rake has been a fun moniker, you can just search it right there, pitchers who rake. Mostly pitchers bunt. And bunting is they're trying to catch the ball, right? So the ball comes in and they're trying to just catch, so it deadens the ball and drops in front of them. That's mostly to allow a runner to advance. So you have a runner at first or second, you're going to try to deaden the ball, and they can move up, right? Because pitchers usually don't hit. So you're either going to strike out and give away an out, or you're going to ground into a double play. You don't want that to happen. Now, you can't do this with 2 outs for obvious reasons. If you give yourself away, you sacrifice yourself. You give it away an out, you're out of the inning. But if you give away an out, you can advance them with 1 out or no outs, then they move up, and that happens. You also have sacrifice flies. And a sacrifice fly is putting the ball in the outfield, and a runner from third scores. Now, the runner from third has to tag up, which is one of the differences between bunting and hitting, the sacrifice fly and the sacrifice fly, but they have to score on that play. So you hit the ball to the outfield, the guy tags up, which is they have to touch that base until that ball is either caught or touches the ground, and then they're able to advance. And again, official ruler will rule all these for you, so you don't have to worry about it too much. Also, that can happen, this is kind of all the hitting side of it. You can have a walk-off home run or a hit, and that is if it's the end of the game, really, the bottom of the ninth, right, the last at-bats, the game's tied or you're down by 1 or 2, and you hit a home run that gives your team the lead, or you get a hit that brings in a run that gives your team the lead, then the game is over. You just walk off the field. And that's what a walk-off is, because once you have a lead near the bottom of the frame, the other team already used all 27 of their outs. There's no purpose of you kind of going on, because you can score 5 more runs. It really doesn't matter all that much. So let's talk pitching, and we'll start with fastballs. And a fastball is a pitcher just trying to throw it as fast as they can, right? It's pretty self-explanatory. And those come with a lot of different names, right? You have heater, you have gas, you have fire, and then you have cheese, high cheese, cheddar. I don't know where the cheese came into it for fastballs, but it has long been, that's what's used for, right? Someone's throwing ched, they're throwing just a lot of heat, right? They throw a really good fastball. Then you have a different variations of the fastball. So you have a 2-seam fastball, which is you have your 2 seams and you have your 2 fingers, 2 seams. Then you have a 4-seamer, which is you have the 2 seams right there plus your 2 fingers across them. That is a 4-seamer. Then you have a cut fastball, and there's a lot of different ways to throw a different cut fastball. This is how I have been taught to hold it, so that when you throw it, you still throw it like a fastball, but your finger kind of, so you're not breaking it like a curveball. You're just, and there's different ways people throw it here. You're just throwing like a fastball, and the natural grip on the lace and your finger pressure will cause it to cut, and that's why it's a cut fastball, right? So a 4-seamer is used mostly to keep straight. So if someone wants to throw as hard as they can and to keep it straight, it may rise a little bit, but it'll be straight. So they teach infielders when you're playing, or outfielders, when you're having to throw the ball, throw it as a 4-seamer, because it doesn't move as much. Whereas a 2-seamer, just because of the natural pressures you put on each lace, can cause it to move a little bit, and that's what a cut fastball does. Pitchers who throw in the mid to high 90s, which is a little bit more normal nowadays in the major league level. Still not everybody can do it, but they're known as fireballers, right? Fireballers now really are like 98 and 100 plus, but still. And they're known as fireballers, flamethrowers, and sometimes power pitchers. Now, power pitchers aren't necessarily guys that still throw fast. There are guys that throw fast, but they throw with a little bit more topspin, which causes the ball to come a little bit more heavy onto the bat. You can break a little bit more bats, right? Or the ball can cut into, just the natural spin causes the ball to cut into guys, and it becomes a little bit more power behind it. They're also, after a fastball, it's thrown the same as a fastball, but it's called a changeup. And there's 2 different types of changeups. You have your circle changeup, which is this way, and you have a 3-finger changeup, which is this way. Now, there's different ways to grip these things. I understand that. So if you're seeing this grip and you're kind of scratching your head because that's not how you throw it, there's different ways to grip it. It all depends, right? I have smaller hands, so my grips have to be changed a little bit. And just remember, I didn't pitch it at a high level. So these are just the way that I was taught to throw it. A great one to look up, and you can look up right here, is the Pitch Ninja. And he has a lot of different videos, a lot of different grips on guys at the major league level that show you how they do it if you really want to kind of see that. But the main purpose of these is to change up the speeds. So you throw all of these the same, right? You're coming over the top and you're snapping your wrist down. You're throwing them all the same, but right, a cutter cuts, a 2-seamer can move a little bit, a 4-seamer is a little bit straight, might go up, where a changeup is slower. So you have a fastball coming at 95 and you have your changeup coming at 84, but they're thrown the same. They look like they're coming out of the hand the same. The only thing that's different is the grip, so it changes up the speed, and that's where the name changeup comes from. Then you move on to breaking balls. Now you have a few different breaking balls, but the main ones that everyone throws is a curveball. This is how I kind of grip one. I know a lot of people grip them a little bit differently, but so I get that pressure on the lace. So the grip is a little similar to cutter. The difference is the motion and how you throw it. So a fastball, you're snapping your wrist this way. A curveball, you're snapping down kind of like you're pulling a light switch. So you're pulling it, because the curveball, you want it to curve down, right? It comes across this way. And you have a 12 to 6 downer, and that basically that's how you're trying to throw a curveball. It starts at 12 o'clock on the face of a clock, and it drops down to 6 o'clock. So if you're looking at a clock face, 12 and 6, that's what you're going for a curveball. It's also known as an Uncle Charlie. Again, I don't know where that came from. Just kind of always what I've been told has been called. Next is the slider. That's the other breaking ball that's kind of the most commonly thrown. And I've been taught to hold it like this. So you split the laces. But again, it's on how you deliver it. So, right, fastballs, curveballs, sliders, because you're sliding across. You want the ball to slide across where it comes in and like this. It's similar to a cutter, but it's slower and it moves more, right? Because a cutter will cut, a slider will slide. It's also known as a slide piece. A good breaking ball, right, is known as, they're just kind of like, so if you throw a good breaking ball, it's disgusting or it's nasty or McNasty or filth. So if you hear them saying they're throwing filth, it's because they're throwing a lot of breaking ball. They have a lot of movement on their pitches, right? I mean, a fastball could be disgusting too if you're some of these pitchers nowadays, they're throwing like 101 and it's tailing away from you. Like just look up Jordan Hicks and see what his fastballs do. It's disgusting, but it's because it moves. It's because the break on the ball that makes it kind of disgusting. It's also known as a sword. Now a sword is a new one. It's kind of one of the newer ones that I know, and it's pretty much the batter's hitting motion. So if they're very badly fooled, so they're looking for fastballs a lot of the times, they're throwing a breaking ball and they're kind of buckle and they just kind of swing it like they're swinging a sword. That's what they're referring to when they talk about a sword. A bad breaking ball is known as a meatball. So if someone that has a meatball or a hanger, or they're throwing a BP fastball, it's because they're throwing a breaking ball that didn't break. So a fastball, for the most part, is going to be a fastball. It's going to be fast. It's going to go in. A breaking ball is meant to move because it's not as fast. And if you throw one and it doesn't move, it's just going to hang up there, right? So like you throw a curveball, it's supposed to drop. But if you get a curveball with too many spins, RPMs on it, and they do keep track of RPMs on pitches, and it doesn't move, it just hangs there, it's just, yeah, it's not going to be good for you, right? It's going to be really good for the batter, but not as good for you. Another kind of breaking pitch that will be thrown, but is a rare of sorts, is a knuckleball, and it's thrown with your knuckles. This one definitely has different variations. And again, I don't have big enough hands to throw it consistently, but you throw it from your knuckles and you throw it almost like a dart. And the purpose of it is to have no movement on it, right? So, and it has no movement, you'd think it'd become a little easier, but because of the no movement, the ball can move any which way, right? The wind can shift it. If there's, I don't know, moisture in the air, whatever, a bug can knock it and it moves everywhere. It is incredibly difficult to hit because of that. It's also incredibly difficult to catch because of it. You'll see the catching mitts of knuckleballers, their catching mitts are bigger. So they have a specific catching mitt just for knuckleballers because you don't know, it's so unpredictable, right? You know what a curveball is supposed to do. You know what a slider is supposed to do, cutters, fastballs. You have no idea what a knuckleballer is going to do. And knuckleballers are known as knucklers, and they throw a knuck. And you can look up Tim Wakefield right there, and you can kind of see what that's supposed to look like. It is very difficult to throw, very difficult to hit and catch. Other types of breaking balls are spitters. You have also a fork ball, and I can't remember the grip of it. Splitter, which is you just split the ball and it kind of comes out. It has a little bit more backspin on it. You have a drop ball, which is not, it's a little bit higher up and it's supposed to drop that way. You also have a palm ball, and then you have an ephus. I don't know how to throw an ephus, or a gyro ball. You can look up Daisuke Matsuzaka for a gyro ball. And I think Greinke threw an ephus. I know Vincente Padilla used to throw an ephus. So if you want to look those guys up, you can see it, or just type in ephus. And hopefully the graphic's right there, but if it's not, EPHUS is ephus. It's a different type of pitch, to say the least. It just kind of flies in the air and then drops into the zone. Pitchers are looking for strikeouts or Ks. And they do Ks because that's how it's written in the book. That's why I always encourage people, if you want to learn the game of baseball, keep book. That's the best way to do it. You write a K. And if you have a backwards K, it's because they struck out and they didn't swing the bat. So they had the bat on the shoulder, the ball came in, and they were called out. That's also if that happens, it's called a punchy. So if you hear someone say punchies or they got punched out, it's because they got struck out. And this comes from the action of the umpire. So if they strike out looking, you'll see the umpire, and there's a lot of different maneuvers, right, that they do. They'll pull to the side and they'll punch. But that's what punchy and punch out comes from, is just the movement from the umpire. Also, what they don't want to get is walks. So every at bat, right, you get a certain amount of pitches. So 4 balls is a walk, 3 strikeouts, or 3 strikes is an out. And you obviously don't want to strike out if your pitcher don't want to walk. And if you have 3 balls, 2 strikes, it means it's a full count, because the next pitch, basically, unless it's a foul ball, determines whether it's an out or a hit or a walk, right? So it's a full count. A walk is also known as a base on balls. So if you see it in the book, it'll be BB. It's also known as a free pass, or you can see IBB, which is an intentional walk. Now, it used to be the catcher used to have to stand up and they would throw 4 pitches outside purposely to walk them. Now, at the major league level, the manager just doesn't come out and say, hey, we want to give this guy the base. They just walk up. It kind of avoids a lot of it. And it's another part to speed up the game a little bit. Manfred, as far as being the commissioner of the league, has made it a purpose of his to speed the game up for good or for better or for worse. Pitcher can also pick somebody off. So if you see someone that gets picked off, it can be from a pitcher or a catcher, and it's a guy takes a lead off the base. So they take the lead off the base because they're leading to the next base, right? You give yourself a little bit more momentum. And again, these things are real. They should be pretty obvious, right? Once you kind of know what they are, the names are given them for a reason. And the pickoff comes over, and the pitcher throws over there and can get them out. Now they have to step off the mound. There's a lot more that goes into it, but it's not as important to know as far as the term goes. But they pretty much, if they throw them, they get them out, they're picked off. And a catcher can do that as well. If you want to look up Yadier Molina, throwing guys out at first, he was probably the best at it. He's made a career, Hall of Fame career off of being just a defensive wizard, a catcher. And especially if there's a pitcher in the left-handed batter's box, because they kind of obstruct the view a bit to first base. So they'll get off first, they'll be a little bit more leisurely, and the catcher will catch it and then throw to first, and then they'll get them. That'll be considered a pickoff as well. Another thing that can happen with pitching that really goes on the official score, as I mentioned, and he'll kind of help you decide that, is a pass ball or a wild pitch. And both of them mean that the ball got past the catcher and a runner was able to advance, whether it's from first to second, second to third, or third to home to score. And the difference between a pass ball and a wild pitch is that a pass ball is on the catcher. It's the catcher's fault the ball got past, right? And if it's a wild pitch, it's from the pitcher. The pitcher threw it wildly. Think of like Rick Ankiel or the Wild Thing Vaughn from Major League. He, right when he's throwing it way over, there's no way the catcher can get it, and it's on him. Official score will decide that. And that's just the difference between them. It's just kind of semantics. Pitchers looking for a no-hitter, a no-no, or a perfect game. So every game has 27 outs. When you're starting the game, you're trying to get all 27 outs. Most pitchers are anyways. And if you get all 27 outs and there's no hits, it's a no-hitter. Now, if you get 27 outs, there's no hits, no walks, no runs, no errors, nobody gets on base at all for any reason, it's a perfect game. And that's the difference. An error or a hit by pitch or a walk can be the difference between a perfect game or a no-hitter. So that's the main difference there. And both of them are very, very big accomplishments, to say the least. The best pitcher in the league every year is the Cy Young, and it's named after the late great pitcher Cy Young from like the early 1900s. But his award is given out every year for both AL and the NL side, and that's kind of like the MVP for pitchers. Jacob deGrom is the back-to-back winner now in the National League, winning in 18-19, and Justin Verlander has picked up another Cy Young in the American League, and he's won one, I think, early in his career, now late in his career. And he's had a Hall of Fame career in his own right. Cy Young Award winners are usually starters too, because starters just throw more innings. And we'll get to that on the stat side. They just throw a lot more innings. Right, starters are going 200 plus innings in a year. The relievers are doing like 60 plus, and starters are asked to do 6 plus innings to get a quality start, where relievers are usually asked to get 1 inning. There's a big difference. There's more load on starters, so they get paid more, and that's why they're usually the Cy Youngs. Eric Gagne of the Dodgers won a Cy Young. And I'm not sure Francisco Rodriguez won one for the Angels, but I know Gagne, and I think there was another one. It may have been Rodriguez to win one as relievers, but very, very, very rarely does that happen. Relief pitchers are pitchers that throw in the bullpen. Now, the bullpen is the mounds and stuff that you see off the field of play that pitchers sit there and they warm up in so they can come in and relieve the starters. That's what they're called, relief pitchers. They're also called bullpen arms because they're out there in the bullpen. Most bullpens are out in the outfield. Wrigley Field used to be on the field, but now it's underneath the bleachers in center field, and you see a lot of funny videos coming from them on their bleacher cam, and you can look those up, and those are a lot of fun as well. There's 2 stadiums that still have them on the field, which is extremely dangerous, but it used to be the thing, not anymore. Those 2 stadiums are the Oakland Coliseum and the Tropicana Field in Tampa Bay. Oakland is looking to move, and they'll probably move in the next couple of years, so that one's going to go away. Tampa Bay is talking about playing half their games in home in Tampa, half their games in Montreal. but they may end up moving here pretty soon as well. So on-field bullpens will probably be a thing of the past in the next 5 years, if not less. All right, let's wrap up the defensive side before we get into the stat side, which will be a little bit more complicated. The defensive side should be pretty quick. A player with a strong arm, usually in right field. You have some at shortstop like Rafael Furcal, but usually in right field, Roberto Clemente, Yasiel Puig, Ichiro Suzuki, Aaron Judge. They have a strong arm. You see them gun out people a lot. They just put the ball on a line or a frozen rope. That's what we're referring to, just a strong throw to get guys out. They're known to have a gun or a cannon. And a guy that's thrown out and tagged is known to be gunned down. So if someone gets guns down or they got a gun or a cannon, that's what happened. Third base on the field is known as the hot corner, and shortstop is just known as short. Now, you have, right, pitchers, catchers, the ones that are catching it. You have first base by first base. You have second base between first and second. You have shortstop between second and third. And then you have third base by third base. And you have left, center field, right fielder. They're pretty straightforward. Third base is the only one that has a kind of a different nickname for the hot corner, because first basemen can kind of play on and off because they just have to get to first base. Third basemen have to get to the ball and still make a throw. So they're mostly play in, and you have a lot of right-handers, and most hitters are pull hitters. Whether they like it or not, most hitters are pull hitters, so you're going to get a lot more action over at third base. It's known as the hot corner because of it. The warning track, you'll see it all the way around the field. Is that dirt track that surrounds the field. And that's just to warn the fielder that's running down a ball that the fence or the net or the bleachers, whatever is coming, you're about to run into it. That's the warning, hence warning track. Ball hit directly in the air is known as a pop-up or a can of corn or popcorn. And really the difference here is if it's a ball hit in the air and it doesn't leave the infield. If it leaves the infield 9 times out of 10 or 99 out of 100, 999 out of 1,000, it's going to be called a fly ball, right? Because it flew out to the outfield. That's the difference between a pop-up and a fly ball. But if you hear someone say can of corn or popcorn, it's because it just went straight up into the air for an out. Now, double plays. So, as I mentioned before, I really do encourage you to take a book if you want to learn the game. Now, a part of taking the book is understanding that each position has names, but each position also has numbers, and this is a big part of the game, right? Pitchers are number 1, catchers are 2, first base is 3, second base is 4, third base is 5, shortstop 6, then you have left is 7, center is 8, and right is 9. And that's important here for a double play. So a double play is also known as turning 2, right? Because you're getting 2 outs. That's why it's called double play. And that can happen a lot of different ways. A guy catches the fly ball, throws a guy out. You line drive and they don't tag up, and they're able to get him out there. And then most of the time, though, a double play is going to be from a ground ball to either someone in the infield, right? And you have a 5-4-3 double play, which is third to second to first to get double play, right? You get force outs, which is when a ball's hit in play, they have to advance to the next base, right? Unless the base behind them is open, they have to advance to the next base before they're able to get the ball and touch that base. So if they get the ball and they beat you there, it's a force out and you're forced out. So that happens on double plays. That's the main purpose of them. You also have a 4-6-3 double play, which is second to short to first. You can have 6-4-3, short, second, first. You have 3-6-1, first, short to the first base or to the pitcher covering first base for the first baseman. 3-6-3. Again, it's all pretty self-explanatory. The other type of double play is a strike 'em out, throw 'em out. So that's if the pitcher's throwing and there's 2 strikes and the guy at first is trying to steal second base. The guy is struck out at the plate. The catcher throws a guy out at second. So he struck him out, he threw him out, and you got 2 outs on that play. Again, double play is just 2 outs. So you have assists and you have putouts on a defensive side. And assists are usually outfielders that throw a guy out. Putouts are usually infielders that get the ball and throw a guy out at first base for a force out. That's really the difference there. There's a little bit more nuance to the rule, but for the most part, if you call an outfielder, you give him the assist, the infielder, the putout, you're going to be right more times than not. Again, if you want to really question it, go look at the official score or the official rules for baseball, but that's what it is for the most part. You have shifts now that are a big thing defensively, and that's just the defense shifting over mostly for a pull. So if you're right-hander, you have the defense shifts over more to the left so that they can play a little bit better, right? The second baseman will leave to the other side of second base, so they have another defender there. If you're a left-handed hitter, you have the third baseman or shortstop, they move to the other side of second base. So you have more people on this side just shifting one way to the other. And that's to play the percentages on where you usually hit the ball. Game that goes into extra innings is anything past 9 innings, right? So you have 9 innings guaranteed, 27 outs. If it goes past 9 innings to the 10th and plus, it's extra innings, right? So we call it bonus baseball, whatever you want to call it, but that's what an extra inning is. Every half inning is the 3 outs that a team is given for them. So like the first half of the first inning, the team is given 3 outs. That's a half inning. The other team gets to hit. That's the other half of an inning to make one full frame or inning. And that kind of does it for the basic side of it. And I know, again, I rushed through this a little bit, but most people should know these things. And I hope if you have any questions or you want to know a little more, listen to the podcast version or email me or message me. I'm more than happy to give more information on this. But let's get into the statistics side of it. It is a little bit more difficult, and I promise I won't say statistics all that often because it does get me tongue-tied from time to time. But it is a very fun one to learn, and I hope you guys do enjoy the work that's going to go into the stats side. But let's get into it. Let's talk statistics. See, jumping into statistics, we're doing starting the same way we kind of did with the basic terminology. We'll do the hitting, the pitching, and then the defensive and just other terms that I haven't covered in the hitting and pitching side of it. The hitting side of it, you talk about a few stats when you're talking about the hitting side of it. First off, you're talking about averages. So usually when you're bringing up a slash line, somebody's slash line. When they say somebody's slash line, that is their average, the home runs they've hit, the RBIs, and now their OPS. And those all kind of fit within that realm. Averages are, there's pretty much just the number of hits compared to the number of at-bats you've had. And when we talk about at-bats, that's at-bats that didn't end in a walk or a sacrifice that we talked about on the basic segment. They do not count towards this average, so those don't count as technical at-bats. So everything outside of that, though, is your at-bats, and that's what your average is based off of. So if you get 30 hits in 100 at-bats, you have a 300 average. And all of these averages are done on a 1,000-point scale. Same with slugging percentage, on-base percentage, and OPS. And 1,000, not as in like 1,000, but in 1.000. So if you know math at least a little bit, 0.300 is 30%. So the league leaders, right? So the American League leader was Tim Anderson of the White Sox, and he had a 335 average this year. So that means he had a hit in 33.5% of his at-bats. Christian Yelich and Ketel Marte, Yelich of the Brewers, Marte of the Diamondbacks, tied for the NL lead, and they had a 329 average, both of them, which means they got a hit 32.9% of the time. And the reason I think they do like this 1,000-point on the scale is because if you say somebody had a 33% average, 33.5% compared to a 32.9%, you're going to say they're basically the same thing. And they're very, very close, but when you're talking about it on the scale of at-bats, you're looking at 600-ish at-bats, it becomes a little different. It's not the same, right? 335 looks a little bit better than 329 compared to 33 to 32.9. And that's probably, that may be the reason why they do that way, but that's what they talk about when they're talking about averages. On base percentage is another thing that's talked about, right? It doesn't fit in that scale of that slash line in a way, and we'll get into that in a second. That's how often a runner gets on base. So walks, hit by pitches, and all those types are counted into this, right? There goes beyond at bats as far as like walks are involved in this. And so it's how many times you get on base compared to how many times you come up to the plate. And a good on base percentage is in like the 400 range, right? Compared to a batting average looking at the 300 range. On base percentage needs to be around the 400 range. And again, 400 is about 40%. Slugging percentage is the one that's next. That's also not in the slash line, kind of. It's the total number of bases gained compared to the total number of at-bats. This counts all the bases you've gained. So, you know, a home run means you get 4 bases, a triple means you get 3, double 2, and a single or walk is 1, right? And so that rewards people for getting extra base hits, as in, right, doubles and triples are a lot better than a single, right? And triples and home runs are a lot better than doubles and singles. A good slugging percentage is about 600%. So Christian Yelich, so the top 5 in the league was Christian Yelich of the Milwaukee Brewers, had a 671. Trout had a 645, Nelson Cruz 639, and Cody Bellinger out of the top 5 with a 629. And those are the best in the league. And as you'll see, these 5 names are going to come up quite a bit when you're talking about hitting stats and leaders. OPS is next. And that's what I mean by, so slugging on base percentage didn't come into the slash line themselves, but OPS did. And all OPS is that slugging percentage plus that on base percentage. That's what OPS is. O on base, P plus S slugging. On base plus slugging. And that's a really good, so a really good OPS is about 1,000, right? And it's not 1,000 as they get it 100% of the time, right? It is 1,000 as in you get like a 600 slugging plus a 400 OPS, right? And there were 6 players over 1,000 OPS in 2019 season. And that again is Christian Yelich, Trout, Cody Bellinger, Nelson Cruz, Alex Bregman, and Anthony Rendon. You can hear those names a lot, right? Those are the 6 best players in Major League Baseball last year, right? Them, and then you can throw in Ketel Marte. Cruz is top 5 as far as hitters go. Defense kind of knocks him down a little bit more, and that's where Marte makes up a little bit of that. Same with like Marcus Semien. But that's OPS is really an important stat now. That's one that they really look at when they're determining a player's value. They're not really looking at RBIs or home runs anymore. All right. And for me, I think a team total RBI, and I'm going to get into it in the next episode when we talk about it, is far more indicative of how good a team is, but an individual RBI number, it could be skewed, and that's the argument. It could be skewed because a high RBI number could be just the result of having a really good team around you, and that's part of it. But still, a guy that consistently over 100 RBIs is probably pretty good. So it's not the best to decide who the best hitter or player in baseball is, but it's a good indicator of where some of the better players are going to be. And that's what we're going to go into next. And the RBI is runs batted in. And that's the accumulated number of runs that have scored by a result of a given at-bat. Right? So if you come to the plate and you put the ball in play and a run scores because of it, you get a run batted in or an RBI. The only time this doesn't happen is, again, same with like the hit area. If an error occurs, or say there's a runner on the bases are loaded, you hit into a double play, the runner comes in to score, you don't get an RBI because you ran into a double play. It negates your RBI. But outside of that, RBIs are counted. And again, a 100 plus RBI season is usually where the top hitters are. So if you're looking at it, the NL leaders, Anthony Rendon, 126, Freddie Freeman, 121, Pete Alonso, 120. The AL leaders, Jose Abreu, 123, Xander Bogaerts, 117, and Jorge Soler, 117. So you look at those numbers, you look at those names. Those are really good players, right? Pete Alonso, Freddie Freeman, Anthony Rendon are very, very good players. Pete Alonso doesn't really have the defense, but he set a rookie record with 50-plus home runs, led the league in home runs this year. Very good player. Jose Abreu, Xander Bogaerts, Jorge Soler and Bogaerts really had breakout years and had very, very good years. We talked about it in the Red Sox episode about Bogaerts, talked about it in the Kansas City Royals episode about Soler. Very, very good. But you're looking at those 6 names, only one of them was in the top 6 as far as MVP vote goes. And that's because the stat is telling in a way, but it doesn't tell the whole story. And that's why people get away from it as far as determining RBIs, right? The average is the home runs, and the RBIs isn't always the best indicator. So the slash line isn't as important anymore as it used to be because of some of the more advanced stats. And you look at it, say, let's go look at next the home run leaders, right? You have the NL leaders, Pete Alonso again at 53, Eugenio Suarez at 49, and Cody Bellinger at 47. The AL side, you have Soler at 48, Mike Trout at 45, and Bregman at 41. So now on the home runs, 3 of the 6 were in the top 6 as far as MVP votes go, right? And Belly, Trout, and Bregman. The rest of them, Suarez, Alonso, and Soler, were not. And in all honesty, I think they may be like close, but they were. I mean, you knew it was gonna be Bellinger, Trout, and then it was Bregman, Yelly, and Rendon, and then Ketel Marte were like the only ones that outside of those guys that really had any sort of chance at the MVP this year. So again, that average RBI and home run slash line just doesn't get it done anymore. Whereas the OPS is a little bit more telling because it covers a wider scope of things for the hitter. Slugging plus and OPS plus, you're gonna see a lot of plus signs. So you will hear slugging plus and OPS plus at some point. The plus, all it stands for is it's an adjustment for metrics, right? An adjustment for the ballparks they play in and the leagues in which the hitters play in. So a guy that plays in Coors Field in Colorado is going to have much larger batting numbers because it's not only is the stadium bigger, but it's thinner air and the ball travels a lot farther. So those numbers are going to be ridiculous. Whereas somebody in Dodger Stadium, especially at night, whenever the marine layer comes over the stadium becomes a little bit smaller and the ball doesn't fly as many. A home run somewhere else is a fly ball out in Dodger Stadium. That's why it's a pitcher's park compared to hitter's park. And the plus is just trying to adjust for that. There was, I guess, a very, very good article on MLB.com, and I need to kind of get into it as I was hearing about it a little bit, where they take like some of Barry Bonds' best years and some of these other players' best years, and they place them in various stadiums in different years. And there was one year that Barry Bonds, when he hit a 72 home runs season, if he would have played in Colorado, he would have had, I think, 90-something home runs. But on the flip side, if he played in Dodger Stadium, he would have had 50-some. Obviously, 70 and 50 are very, very good, but there's a huge gap. There's a 40 home run gap right there. And that's what the plus is trying to take out of it to determine a player's true value. And that's the purpose of all of these things. So let's get into the little bit more advanced stats, some of the numbers, some of the names that you're going to hear a lot of. We'll get into it. There's a lot of paralysis by analysis you're going to hear. It's a very popular saying in stats and data, and you're going to kind of know why. The first one up is BABIP, and that is batting average for balls hit in play. Right? It's popular among National fans for this postseason, as I guess BABIP was a good friend of theirs. It's also fun to say. And if you're saying BABIP and you're talking about baseball, the common fan and lay fan, the casual fan, is going to think that you know exactly what you're talking about, and they may listen to you a little bit more than somebody that's not using these intelligent words as BABIP. And BABIP is pretty self-explanatory, right? It's the average for balls that are hit into play. So home runs, foul balls, strikeouts, pop flies, right, that are went out of foul, that were caught, they don't count. The balls that were put into play. So a high BABIP could be a signifier of having good luck, where a low BABIP could be a signifier that you had bad luck. No, it's not a perfect stat by any means. And so you're looking at the 2019 BABIP leaders. The first one up is the Chicago White Sox, Yoan Moncada, who had a 406 BABIP. And Moncada had what many people thought was a breakout year, because it was kind of a breakout year. He had a very, very good year there for the Chicago White Sox. But this indicates that he's probably going to have some regression in 2020 or 2021, whenever the season of baseball starts back up again, because he had a lot of luck in 2019. The next one on the list was your MLB average leader, also with the Chicago White Sox, Tim Anderson. He had a 399 BABIP. And those are the only two at 400 or above. So it would mean the White Sox, who are supposed to go forward a little bit, and they may because of some off-season additions that they've made, and we've talked about it in past episodes, Rasmani Grandal being one of them, bringing back Abreu, another one. They may have some regression in two of their better younger hitters, in Anderson and Moncada. We'll see. The other one on the list is Brian Reynolds, and he had a 387 BABIP, but he didn't have a great numbers for the year, and he's very young, and he's going to continue to improve. So having a high BABIP doesn't necessarily mean he's going to have a bad next year. But number 5 on this list is a very even more interesting one, right? The Milwaukee Brewers' Christian Yelich. Yelich has been a MVP player, right? His first year in Milwaukee, MVP runner-up. Many people thought he should have won MVP. We'll kind of get into why he didn't here in a bit. But he's number 5 on BABIP at 355. Now it's a big gap, right? It's a 50. It's a 0.5% gap between him and our 0.05 point gap between him and Yoan Moncada at the top, and even Tim Anderson at number 2. But still, being 5 means he was the 5th luckiest hitter in baseball, which means he might have a bit of aggression when we start playing baseball again, and I highly doubt that. He's a very good ball player. So again, BABIP, not a perfect stat. It's just fun to say. So I can say BABIP all day, BABIP, right? Again, you just say BABIP to people and start talking about it, and they would think that you know exactly what you're talking about when it comes to baseball. The next one up is WOBA, another fun one to say, and that is a lowercase w and uppercase OBA, and it stands for weighted on base percentage. Again, also pretty self-explanatory, right? It's trying to take on base percentage and then weigh it against what the rest of the league is doing, and then it's trying to give more value to different hits. It's like it's almost like OPS, similar to OPS, right? Where it's trying to give you more, it's trying to add slugging and on base percentage together, but this one has an equation to it. And this is the first equation we're going to get into. We're going to get into a few other ones as well. WOBA's equation is, ready? 0.690 times base on balls plus 0.722 times hit by pitch plus 0.888 times singles plus 1.271 times doubles plus 1.616 times triples plus 2.101 times home runs. All of that divided by at-bats plus walks minus intentional walks plus stolen bases plus hit by pitch. That is weighted on base percentage. As I said, it's a little bit more complicated version of OPS, really, because you're putting a little bit more weight onto doubles, triples, and then home runs, right? As each one goes up, you get a little bit more value to it. You also get a little bit more value for singles as you do hit by pitches, and a little bit more than you get for just regular walks. So it's trying to weigh out what you've actually done to get on base. And that's the purpose of WOBA. Your 2019 WOBA leaders, again, you're going to hear these names a lot. Christian Yelich at 442, Mike Trout, 463. And you know, I think I did write that wrong. Mike Trout was number 2, so I think it was actually 433. Alex Bregman is 418, Nelson Cruz, 417, Cody Bellinger, 415. Very good hitters, right? Your best players in the league. So maybe there's a little bit of credence to the WOBA metric. We'll let you decide that. The next one up is RAW, and that is lowercase w, RAA, and that is weighted runs above average. And again, hopefully there's a something right here that shows this to you. And the equation for this is WOBA minus 0.320, that divided by 1.25, that times at-bats plus walks plus hit by pitch plus sacrifice flies plus sacrifice hits. A raw of 0 means that the player didn't create any more runs than the league average. But it's the RBI rendition of WOBA. It's trying to gauge. It's similar to WAR, and we're gonna get to WAR here in a second. It's trying to weigh your value as far as the runs that you've created as an offensive player compared to other players in the league, right? In your 2019 raw leaders, Yelly 61, Mike Trout 60.4, Alex Bregman 58.8, Cody Bellinger 54.2, Anthony Rendon 51.8. Again, names you've already heard. Best players in the league for a reason. They're going to be here a lot. There are other variations of WOBA and RAW. If you would like to learn more, you can find them here. There's a lot of you're going to see with like runs created and WAR. There's a lot of variations of this. There's those equations I read you aren't the only ways to do it. It gets way too complicated, and there's really no reason to know it other than you just like that stuff, I guess. So you can find them at baseballreferences.com/about/war_explained/raw.shtml. I'm going to put it here. I'm also going to put in the episode description if you want to find that. The next metric, let's move past that, is ISO, and that is isolated power. ISO, WOBA, BABIP, and OPS Plus, they're all pretty much used for gambling. They're used for fantasy baseball games, for cash games. Some of their definitions were taken here that I'm giving to you from rotorgrinders.com, which is a very, very popular sports betting site, especially for baseball. Sorry if you live in Arizona, can't do it. I'm sure most of you already know that. If you live in Arizona, you do those gambling games. But if you live outside of Arizona in a state that doesn't have laws prohibiting it, RotoGrinder seems to be a pretty popular destination. And ISO, is getting back to that isolated power, is used to define the power of a hitter. Similar to slugging, other things. and it is slugging percentage minus batting average, and that is your ISO. So it's trying to, in short, remove singles from the equation, right? You want to have your slugging minus your batting average so that you're pretty much just tracking your doubles, triples, home runs. Runs created is next, and runs created is the most complicated that we're going to get into so far. This one and more will be the two most complicated we'll talk about, and we're not even going to talk about all of it. Now, runs created was invented by Bill James, and if you've watched or read the Moneyball movie, right, or read the book, you will know the name Bill James. He is kind of a pioneer as far as sabermetrics goes in the Moneyball movement. He's a complicated person, right? So he helped start a lot of these things, but he kind of got stuck in his ways and like fell behind. And a lot of people that are in the baseball, the numbers games now don't care much for Bill James. Maybe they're thankful for some of the things that he created, runs created for one. But he's had a very complicated career since then. And a very complicated relationship with baseball. Maybe one day we'll do an episode on Bill James. A runs created plus, again, ballpark adjusted and league adjusted. But runs created comes with, there's 4 types. There's 4 different formulas for runs created. Let's just dive into them. So the first one is the basic one. The basic one is hits plus walks times total bases. You take that and you divide it by at-bats plus walks. The second method is stolen bases. It's a stolen base method. So it's hits plus walks minus caught stealing, that times total bases plus 0.55 times stolen bases. All of that divided by at-bats plus walks. You still with me? All right. Third method. This is the technical method. This is hits plus walks minus caught stealing plus hit by pitch minus ground into double play, that times total bases times 0.26 times walks minus intentional walks plus hit by pitch, all of that plus 0.25 times sacrifice hits plus sacrifice flies plus stolen bases, all of that divided by at-bats plus walks plus hit by pitch plus sacrifice flies plus sacrifice hits. Okay, it's 3 down. Now the most complicated of them. You understand what I mean by saying paralysis by analysis. Okay, there's one more version of runs created. It is the 2002 version. Again, most complex. A equals hits plus walks minus caught stealing plus hit by pitch minus ground into double play. B equals 1.25 times singles plus 1.69 times doubles plus 3.02 times triples plus 3.73 times home runs plus 0.29 times walks minus intentional walks plus hit by pitch. All of that plus 0.492 times sacrifice hits plus sacrifice flies plus stolen bases. All of that minus 0.4 times Ks. C equals at-bats plus walks plus hit by pitch plus sacrifice flies plus sac hits. D equals 2.4 times C plus A times 3 times C plus B. And that leads to the real equation of the 2002 runs created version being D divided by 9 times C, that minus 0.9 times C. And that's it. It's easy peasy. That's runs created plus. And if you really want to know more about this, I will leave the link in there. It's from captaincalculator.com. And again, if you want to dive into more, it's up to you. I'll leave the link in the episode description. 2019 runs created plus leaders. Stop me if you've heard these names before. Trout 180, Yelich 174, Bregman 168, Nelson Cruz 163, Cody Bellinger 162. And I hear the screams of Christian Yelich should have been the NL MVP. We'll get into it in a second. Pull, center, and oppo percentages are also kept in, and that's where the shifts kind of go in. The people want to know if they pull to their pull side more, the percentages of how often they do that, how often they hit up the middle, how often they hit up to the opposite side. So they do that. They also do a K to walk ratio, like how often you walk compared to your Ks, right? So if you walk, right, if you strike out 10 times and walk once, you have a 10 to 1 K to walk ratio, which isn't good. And that's used for both the pitching and the hitter side. Obviously better for the pitcher than the batter, or if it's 10 to 1. But let's get into the next one. Again, the second most complicated one, and that is WAR. Okay, WAR means wins above replacement. And it's hotly debated over the validity in determining a player's value, which all of these metrics are. But WAR is used a lot, especially from like MLB and like ESPN and Bleachers Report, things of those. They really like to use WAR. But there are 3 different variations of WAR, and it's based on the websites that produce them. And each 3 of these websites are very, very good if you want to just get into baseball. Yes, you can get into the deeper stat side on these pages, but they have just a lot of information for you as far as that goes. The first one up is Fangraphs, and it's fangraphs.com. I'll leave all these again in the episode description. It is FWAR. So when you see FWAR, that means it's just the equation used from Fangraphs, and that was developed in December of 2008. The second one is Baseball References, which is BWAR or RWAR. So if you see BWAR or RWAR, and it's lowercase b, f, and r, B and R comes from baseballreferences.com. And that was developed in May 2010 from a blog post by Sean Smith. And that one has there's slightly different equations. And then the last one, which is probably the most different equation, is Baseball's Prospectus, and that is WARP. W-A-R-P, and it's an uppercase P, and that's from Baseball Prospectus, and that was developed around 2001, so that's the oldest version. Most WAR for position players is as follows. This is the equation for it. Batting runs plus base running runs plus fielding runs plus positional adjustment plus league adjustment plus replacement runs divided by runs per win. And runs are just kind of separate. They're trying to determine how many runs you've created, and then the dividing is to make it into wins, like how those turned into wins. So you see that there's the league adjustment. There's also a positional adjustment. So it's not just for WAR doesn't just take into account everybody. It's so you play shortstop. How many runs did you create as a shortstop, right? Offensively and defensively. How many runs did you create during that time, right? Because you have fielding runs, base running runs, and batting runs. How many runs did you create while you're on the base pass, while you're at the plate, and when you're fielding compared to other people in your league and at your position? So that's what it's trying to determine, is your value as a specific positional player in a specific league. And each league is a little bit different. So Fangraphs, Baseball References, Baseball Prospectus, their equations are slightly different. So you'd think they come out with the same thing because their equations, for the most part, they're the same. It's like just slight tweaks, but they're different. So FWAR refers to Fangraphs, of course, and the biggest difference really with them is the calculation on the pitching. So on pitching side, we're going to get into it. FWAR uses FIP in determining a pitcher's value, while BWAR uses the RA9, and we'll get into both those stats when we get to the pitching side of it. But the positional player side, there's not one specific equation you can kind of point to unless you really dive into it, but you can see it in the numbers. So take Aaron Boone, for instance. We're going to get into him in the next episode when we talk about the Yankees. He's the Yankees manager. He had an average career, right, for the most part. He lasted in the league quite a long time. He was beloved in New York. He's made himself to be a very good manager. But career-wise, if you look at the numbers, was kind of average. So you're looking at the FWAR, he had a 10.0 FWAR. And remember, this is a cumulative. He had a lot of years. 10 WAR isn't great. I mean, it's definitely above average, and he lasted a long time in the league, but 10 WAR isn't great. BWAR, it was 13.6, so he has 3.6 more wins created, according to BWAR. And then if you go to WARP, he's at 15.3. That's a 5.3 win difference between FWAR and WARP. And that is a pretty big difference, as we're going to get into. Now you're looking at the league MVP. So you go to Cody Bellinger, the NL MVP, right? He had an FWAR of 7.8, a BWAR of 9.1, and a WARP of 8.0. Mike Trout on the AL side, he's the AL MVP. He had an FWAR of 8.6, BWAR of 8.2, and a WARP of 8.9. So if you're looking at it, Trout had a much better FWAR. They had much worse BWAR, and then a slightly better WARP. Can you see why there's confusion and why people don't think this is a perfect stat? And then they argue over which website has it right. Right? I mean, if you're a Dodger fan and a Cody Bellinger fan, you're going to argue all day long that BWAR is the best site to go by. If you're a Mike Trout fan or anybody outside of the Dodgers, maybe Diamondbacks or Giants fan, you're going to argue that FWAR is the most significant indicator. And the reality is they're both very, very good players, right? Trout's the GOAT, so. The runner-ups, we can look at the runner-ups, right? Because people were screaming Christian Yelich should have won it. Looking at the NL side of Christian Yelich, he had a 7.8 FWAR, which is the same as Cody Bellinger. He had a 7 BWAR, which is 2.1 wins less than Cody Bellinger. And that is significant in WAR. So, right? And then he had a 6.5 WARP, which is 1.5 less than Cody Bellinger. And if you're wondering why Yelich was so far ahead in the other stats we talked about, but is behind him on WAR in all of them but one of them, right, where they were tied in FWAR, that's because defense is brought into it, and Cody Bellinger was a much better defender, and that was the difference. That's why Pete Alonso and Nelson Cruz aren't on these lists, because their WARs weren't as high because they didn't play the same amount of defense. I think they're both actually negative defensive players. Yelich obviously isn't, but he's not the plus guy that a Cody Bellinger is. Same reason like Mark Semien is here. Mark Semien is the third finalist in the AL. He was a third finalist because of his defense. Offensively, his numbers aren't great, but he ended up with a 7.6 FWAR, 8.9 BWAR, and a 7.5 WARP, which is all really good. A lot of it drawn on by his defense, right? And you're looking at the AL runner-up just ahead of him, 8.5, 9.1, 8.6. So he's pretty close to him in all those categories. And if you're looking at the numbers-wise, they're not close. Right, and then you go to Anthony Rendon, the NL finalist, who people thought should have won in WAR. Right, and he was third place as well. He had a 7.0, 6.4, 6.3, which are good, but would probably finish sixth out of all these guys if you're looking at WAR. So how much validity does WAR have? Which side has the most validity? If you have the answer to that, then you can, I guess, join the club. But enough of the WAR. We're going to get a little bit more of it with the pitching side of it, but we're not going to get into the equations like we did. So the pitching side of it, let's get into the traditional stats, kind of like we did with the hitters. You have the strikeouts. We talked about that already in the basic side, what a strikeout is. But 200 plus Ks is the goal for the season. Only 2 pitchers in 2019 had 300 plus, and that's obviously a phenomenal season. And that was Justin Verlander with 300 even, and Garrett Cole with 326. And as we get into the next episode, you can see why the Astros led most pitching categories in 2019. Walks you want to keep low, right there, more of a traditional stat as well, as is wins. And so people are arguing wins, and wins kind of falls into that RBI category. 20 wins is the same as having 100 RBIs, where it's, obviously you're a very good player. You had a very good year if you had 20 wins and 100 RBIs, but how much of that had to do with the team you played for? There could be a guy with 80 RBIs or with 10 wins is a much better pitcher, had a much better season, but they didn't have the team around them. Whereas the cumulative wins in RBIs means so much more than the individuals. Although the individual having a high one is not something to scoff at or a bad thing. So that's the argument that you have with the wins and the RBIs. They kind of fit into that same category in a way. So if a pitcher throws a minimum of 5 innings and leaves the game with the lead, they are awarded the win, right? So you have to throw 5 innings. You have to get to that point. If the lead changes or the game is tied at any point after the pitcher has left the game, the pitcher is given a no decision. So this is where it gets tricky, right? And if that pitcher leaves the game at any point and the team is behind, they receive a loss. So say a pitcher throws 7 innings and has the lead, and he's doing this on a consistent basis, but every time he leaves the game, the bullpen gives up the lead, and he's getting all these no decisions, and he's not getting very many wins. You saw that with Felix Hernandez throughout most of his career. He was King Felix, is one of the best pitchers in the league, but he was getting like 10 to 12 wins this season. He was arguably the best pitcher in the American League for a 3-4 year stretch, and he won a Cy Young in that time frame, and he just wasn't getting very many wins. So that's where the point you're trying to make. But then you look at like Justin Verlander, Garrett Cole, they were getting 20 plus wins because they were good. So you have to have the other pieces around you to have the wins, but they don't dictate how good of a pitcher you are. And that's the point that stat people are trying to drive in to people. And so a quality start is also something that a pitcher is trying to get to, and that's 6+ innings with 3 runs or less. And people will look at that a lot more than they look at the win side of it. So if you're doing that a lot, obviously you're having a good year. ERA or earned run average, you hear that a lot, and I use that a lot because it's a Still a very good stat to go on. People will argue this one too, is you're going to find out there's not a stat that is used now that you're not going to have people argue over the validity of determining a player's value when using. ERA is no exception to that. And ERA has been around a little bit longer than some of these other stats. A run scored without the help of a defensive error is counted as an earned run, right? And then they average those earned runs over a 9-inning period because a game is 9 innings. So if a pitcher throws 9 innings and gives up 1 run, they have an ERA of 1 for that game. If they throw 90 innings and give up 20 runs, then they have an ERA of 2. Does that make sense? Pretty much they give up 2 runs in those 9 innings per every 9 innings. A good ERA sits in the 3 range, and a great ERA is under 2, or is under 3, right? They're aiming for under 3, and a rare one is under 2. You've seen that with like Kershaw was pretty good at doing under 2 quite a bit. This year there was nobody under 2. The Hyun-Jin Ryu led the majors and the NL in ERA this year with a 2.32 ERA. Jacob deGrom was the NL Cy Young Award winner. He was second in the league with a 2.43 ERA. And then I think Cole and Verlander were right behind them in that same range. WHIP is next. And you hear me use WHIP a lot. I do like WHIP. And WHIP is a walks and hits per inning pitched. So they're averaging out how many walks and hits you give. Pretty much how many base runners do you give up per inning you're pitching in. So if you have a 1.2 WHIP, that means you've given up 1.2 hits or walks every inning that you pitch. Make sense? A good pitcher has a WHIP around or a little over 1, right? You want to stay in that 1 range. Under 1 is a great pitcher. So Justin Verlander, the ALCS Cy Young, right? The AL Cy Young Award winner, finished with a 0.8 WHIP. Garrett Cole, his other teammate, was number 2. He finished with a 0.89 WHIP. Jack Flaherty and Jacob deGrom tied for the NL best WHIP with a 0.97. So that means they gave up less than 1 hit or walk, less than 1 base runner per every inning that they threw in, which is pretty good. And a WHIP and ERA plus is a stadium adjusted for the hitter. So you will see WHIP plus, you will see ERA plus. Batting average against is also used, and that is the cumulative batting average of the batters that you hit. So it's not necessarily their average for the season, but their average in at bats against you. Right, so if a pitcher faces 20 batters in a game and gives up 5 hits, then he has a batting average against of 250. Only 4 pitchers were below 0.20 or 200 in 2019. Justin Verlander had a 0.172, which is ridiculous. Cole 0.186, Flaherty 0.192, and Sonny Gray's 0.196. Sonny Gray's a bit surprising there. He's definitely having a bit of a comeback for a very, very talented Cincinnati Reds rotation who could be a sight to behold for this year and next year. So you see Sonny Gray there with a 0.196. That Reds rotation is going to be very dangerous. And they are a legit contender for that NL Central. Make no mistake about it. And actually, they may be my pick for that. And I talked about it in one of the podcast episodes, so please go back and listen to that. I think it was episode 18, where I did my 10 list of contenders. But anyways, any pitch is also tracked, right? So you want to know that they not only have good numbers, but they're doing it over a lot of innings. They have the longevity, and they're just going out there day in, day out and getting it done for you. 200 plus, same with strikeouts, is the goal, right? Justin Verlander had 223. Shane Bieber had 214.1, and Trevor Bauer with 213. Trevor Bauer, again, another one of those Reds pitchers. Relievers aim for 60 plus. 90 plus is great, and there was 2 relievers with 90 plus innings in Sam Gaviglio with a 95.2 for the Blue Jays, and Jalen Beeks threw 92 innings for the Rays. They're not going to do that every year, man. It wears on a reliever's arms. The difference between a reliever and a starter is the starters build themselves up, and they don't throw full out every inning. That's why they don't throw as many innings. Where a reliever, they're only going to go in there for an inning or 2 at a time, so they're going to go out there and they're going to go all out. And so it wears their arms a lot faster, that style of pitching. It's a different way of going about things. And the stats above, obviously, most of them favor starting pitching, as most of the other ones will. Other stats that are tracked is home runs given up, home runs per 9 innings, total earned runs that they've given up, total runs they've given up, which is away from earned runs, right? Runs include the runs that are scored on errors and whatnot. They're tracked how many walks per 9 innings, how many Ks per 9 innings. All those are also tracked. Holds are another thing that are tracked, and this is for the more of the reliever side of it. So if a guy came into the game late while the team had the lead, and they were able to get out of their inning, right? They have to finish that inning while still holding that lead, then they will receive a hold. Now, it's not the guy that comes in at the end of the game and holds down the lead, then they get to close, and they get a save. That's called a save. It's like in the 7th or 8th. Like a guy comes in the 8th inning, shuts it down, they still have the lead, he gets a hold. Next guy comes in, shuts down the 9th, and they get a save, right? So closer is usually the best pitcher in the bullpen. 8th inning guy is probably the second best pitcher in the bullpen. And saves are, again, when they enter the game with the lead in the 8th or 9th, and then they finish the game out. So they got to finish the last out of the inning without giving up the tie or the lead at any point, right? So they can't go in the 8th and the game's tied, the team scores in the top of the 9th, and then they come in the bottom of the 9th and finish the game off. No, the lead cannot change once they enter the game. If they have a lead, they have to remain the lead until the very end of the game, then they can receive, and they can go up to 3 innings pitched, right? So that's the most you can get for a save. Save opportunities are also tracked, so you'll see like, who is it? There's a team that we'll get into that had like 77 save opportunities and only like, I think it was the A's, like 40 saves. So they had 37 times where they weren't able to complete the save. They may not have lost all those games, but the game was either tied or the lead changed at some point after a save opportunity was presented itself. There's only one pitcher this year with a 40-plus save season. That was Kirby Yates of the San Diego Padres, the veteran with a 41 saves. You usually see more than that, and you may see more than that next year. There's a lot of pitcher or save closers in that 30 save realm. So I'm going to guess you're going to see a couple more in 2021. I don't know what's going to happen in 2020, but in 2021, I'm guessing you're going to see a little bit more. FIP is the next one we're going to talk about. And I talked about FIP earlier. It's used in the WAR equation for pitchers from Fangraphs. And FIP is fielding independent of pitcher. And this is kind of like the runs created of pitching, right? And the equation for this one is, so FIP, here we go. 13 times home runs times, or plus 3 times hit by pitch plus walks minus 2 times Ks, all that divided by innings pitched plus the FIP constant. Now, FIP is an attempt to discover a pitcher's ERA if you remove bad luck or defense, right? So you're trying to take BABIP out of the equation when trying to evaluate a pitcher's value. FIP constant, right, it's used to make the FIP appear like an ERA scale. So it's used to just move it to the scale of an ERA. Generally, it's around 3.10 according to Fangraphs. But a FIP constant, the equation for it is league average minus 13 times league home runs plus 3 times league walks plus league hit by pitch minus 2 times league Ks divided by league inning pitch. The FIP is more or less the attempt to isolate a pitcher's, again, performance independent, but you can do the equation on your own if you want to. You just got to take all the league averages and put them in there. Otherwise, just go to Fangraphs, they'll do it for you. But the FIP is one that a lot of people really do like. It's especially the XFIP. It's one of the ones I have yet to hear, one of the very few that I've yet to hear people kind of go against, right? Not a lot of people dislike FIP. FIP is very, very popular among statisticians and the baseball world. So XFIP, right? So we're going to talk about that next. Actually, you know what? Let's go FIP leaders first. So FIP leaders, NL side is Max Scherzer at 2.45, Jacob deGrom 2.67, and then Walker Buehler's third with 3.01. The AL side is Mike Clevenger. Keep in mind, Mike Clevenger threw 126 innings, so he's a little bit shy on the inning side of it. But he had a 2.49. Garrett Cole had a 2.64. Charlie Morton had a 2.81. And again, these other guys threw 70 plus more innings than Clevenger. Doesn't take away that Clevenger was very, very good in a short amount of time. Now XFIP. Again, XFIP is one that is very, very well liked. Here's the equation for that. 13 times fly balls times league home runs times foul ball percentage plus 3 times walks plus hit by pitch minus 2 times Ks divided by innings pitched plus that FIP constant. And this one was made by Dave Studfield of the Hardball Times. And again, that's from Fangraphs. Fangraphs Baseball Perspectives. You're going to see a lot of those on here. That's where a lot of the stuff is at. Roto Grinders, even in a sense, because they do cash games, but you really got to know these things. And the difference between FIP and XFIP really is just you're replacing the total home runs with the amount of home runs that should have occurred according to the fly ball rate. So it's kind of like its own version of a ballpark adjustment right? So how many of those fly balls could have been home runs? Your 2019 xFIP leaders, they look slightly different, but they're still kind of the same, right? Max Scherzer, 288. Jacob deGrom, 311. Steven Strasburg, 3.17. And then the AL side, Garrett Cole, 248. Chris Sale, yes, 293. And then Mike Clevenger, again, threw less innings, but had a 3.09. And you can see Garrett Cole move from, I think, third with FIP. Let's look. 2 with FIP, all the way up to 1 at the AL xFIP. And xFIP and R9, again, are the differences. So Fangraphs uses FIP. Baseball Prospectus uses RA9. And RA9 is just runs allowed per 9 innings pitched. That's total runs allowed per 9 innings pitched. That's pretty simple. And that's kind of all from the defensive side. So the WAR, as we mentioned, all you're doing is replacing some of those terms with FIP and with RA9. Fangraphs, Baseball Prospectus do all these things for you. So you don't really need to know the equation. You just go type in somebody's WAR and both of those pages will pop up. You can even type in their WARP and you can get Baseball Prospectus to pop up. So that'll do it for the pitching. You don't really need to know anything outside of that. The defensive side, and then we'll kind of wrap it up. Now, UZR is the first one of the defensive side, and that's the ultimate zone rating. And that's an attempt to put a value on defense. And as you're going to see with the defensive side, there's not a lot of equations because they're all kept by websites themselves, and the equations are far more convoluted than the pitching and the hitting side of it. Defense is much harder to track, and so most people don't even bother, and they just kind of rely on pages like Fangraphs and the Fielding Bible especially. But UZR Ultimate Zone Ratings, again, is an attempt to put a run value on defense or to hold a defensive player accountable for the runs they were responsible for. And there's a lot that goes into this. And in reality, I probably never use UZR. I know some people do. Some people really like it. If you want more information, I can provide the link to that as well, and I will. And it's a blog post on Fangraphs, again. Defensive runs saved is one that is really looked at, and that's probably the one that's most used from a defensive side of things. This metric is tracked by John Dewan of the Fielding Bible. Again, Fielding Bible is big in this. And the Fielding Bible is a great place to go for those interested in defensive metrics and other stats and definitions like stolen base run saved, bunt run saved, double play run saved, outfield arms run saved, home run saved, and catch run saved, plus minus run saved, all of that, all of those things, right? They go into defensive run saved, and it's pretty much total defensive run saved. So defensive run saved are all adjusted based on the position of each player, similar to some of the WAR, right, or runs created. They're trying to adjust it for the position in the league and where they play at around them. And it's not there's no specific equation. That's why I'm not going to put equation. There's no specific equation to track these. Mostly we just trust the Fielding Bible, right? So, because again, it's hard to track defense. Here's a small excerpt to kind of show you guys why and what I'm talking about. Okay, and I'm going to quote this. So, in the range and positioning system, the computer totals all ground balls hit by handed batters to vector 206. Vector 206 is a line extending from home plate towards the hole between the normal shortstop and third base positions, 19 degrees off the third base foul line, with an average velocity between 65 and 75 miles per hour, and determines that these types of batted balls are converted outs by a shortstop only 23% of the time. Therefore, if the shortstop converts a slowly hit ball on vector 206 into an out, that's a heck of a play, and it scores at a plus 0.77. The credit for the play made 1.00 minus the expectation that it should be made, which is 0.23. If that play isn't made, it's a negative 0.23. And that's from the Fielding Bible itself. So they're tracking where you should be played at, right, for that position based on whether you're shifting or you're not, your normal position of play. And then they're basing it on the angle that the ball is taking when it's hit. They're also basing it on the speed that the ball is hit. And then they're tracking it among all players at that position, and they're putting a percentage of times that play is made. And if the play is made, again, 23% of the time, that means 0.23% of the time the play is made. So you take that 0.23 and you divide it by a full 100, 0.100, and you get 0.77, so you get that plus, and they just kind of accumulate over the season. But every time you make a play that should be made, even if it's like only made 10% of the time, if you don't make that play, you get a negative 0.10 because somebody in the league has made it. And that's why the percentage gets started, because somebody in the league has made it. So if you want to be the elite of the elite, you need to make the plays that other players can make. You can't say it can't be made because it's been made before. And that's what the Fielding Bible is doing, and they're trying to develop these defensive runs saved. And if you're looking at it, yes, Cody Bellinger had a much higher defensive run saved. Mike Trout always has a high defensive run saved. Mookie Betts, Byron Buxton keeps himself in the league. Marcus Semien, those guys, Nolan Arenado, Matt Chapman, two now back-to-back Platinum Glove winners, which is the best fielder in all of the AL and all of the NL. And those guys have high defensive runs saved, and it's all tracked here. And those guys, they definitely hurt the system because they make plays that nobody can make. And so people are getting constantly negative amounts because those guys make some spectacular play and another guy can't, and then they get hit on their defensive run saved. Your defensive run saves for 2019, Matt Chapman at 34 on the AL. This is the AL side. Roberto Perez, catcher for the Indians, at 30. Matt Olson, first baseman for the A's, 18. So you have Matt Chapman for the A's all the way up at 34, then Roberto Perez at 30, and then it goes all the way down to Matt Olson at 18, which is also really, really good, but it's a pretty big gap. And if you notice there, you have the first baseman and third baseman of the A's, the top three in the AL side. The NL side, you have Paul DeJong, who doesn't get talked about enough for his defense. He's the Cardinals shortstop. He has a 26 defensive run saved. I think he comes in at 3 overall in the league. Javier Baez is tied with him with 26. He's the shortstop for the Cubs. So you have 2 shortstops on the NL side. And then Victor Robles, an outfielder for the Washington Nationals, has a 23 defensive run saved. All of them really good. And the UZR and the defensive run saved are helped to determine defensive WAR, which is, they do it in a similar way that FIP and RA9, right? So Baseball References really likes defensive run saved, where Fangraphs, as I mentioned, we get the Fangraphs is the one that gives us the definition for this, really likes UZR. But that'll do it for all the terms. We're done. Take a deep breath. But if you want to learn baseball terminology, it's the best place to do it. That will do it for episode 2 of Podhacks Only YouTube. Hope you guys enjoyed it. I didn't have a juicy gem in there. I didn't have a league whip around. That's for a couple reasons. One, this is kind of unorthodox. I just wanted to get this episode out. I wanted to do terminology all over again. I've been wanting to since I've done it in December. I felt like it was a perfect opportunity to get kind of multiple YouTube episodes out to start off with, to kind of catch it up with the podcast. Not necessarily catch it up, but get some more content out there and to keep the momentum up from the first episode and not just kind of wait on it and then keep people waiting. Next week, we'll get back to kind of our normally scheduled program, and I want to do episodes every Monday. I want to put out the YouTube and the podcasting version every Monday. It may come, if the video editing takes a little bit longer, will come out on Tuesday, and I will update you on that in the podcast or on my Instagram, my Facebook, or my Twitter. Again, all that will be in the episode description. Please go to my website at any time, justareyes.com, if you want even more information. I hope you guys did like this episode. I did put a lot into it, and it was a lot of fun. I know I cut out the MLB whip around. I did cut out the juicy gems. I kept the intro short. Probably keep the outro a little bit short as well. But please let me know your feedback on this one. I really do value your feedback. It does go a long ways. I put a lot of effort into the show, and that's because I want people to like it. And I don't know if you like it if you don't tell me, and I don't know what you like and what you don't like, and I can build on those things. So all my contact information is here. Again, you can go to my website anytime and get a hold of me, justareyes.com. And it goes a long ways in building the show. So, but you know, I'm rambling. There's going to be a lot to talk about in the next episodes. On Monday, we're going to go back to our, again, regular scores program. We're making our way to the league in the podcast, right? We're going 5 teams at a time. And we've done the 5 non-playoff teams. Right? Finished up in episode 18 with the last 5 playoff teams. And if you haven't done so, go back and listen to that episode, because I go over the 5 teams that just missed the playoffs. And at the end of the episode, I give you my top 5 list of teams that have the best chance of going from a non-playoff team to a playoff team in 2020 or if they play this year. And we'll get into that too in the next episode. There's going to be a little bit more to talk about in the MLB whip around, because we have the Major League Players Association and MLB meeting right now to determine a lot of things. We also have had a couple pitchers go out since the last one. Chris Sale and Noah Syndergaard, they went out. We'll discuss what that means and why. And so there'll be more to talk about. And we'll do a juicy gem there as well, because there's still some good things going on, and I want to share those things with you guys as well. I don't want to just be the doom and gloom of there's no baseball going on, players are going out, yeah, still baseball, still a lot of joy to be brought. So I hope you guys like this. Remember to like and subscribe. Big thumbs up right there. There's a subscribe button right there. Hit that as well. They go a long way in building this show. Just please do that. The song is from my buddy Isaac Lesage, and you can type that in. Isaac Lesage, ISAACLESAGE. It's got some good music. Type that in. He provided the music. That's Lucky 27s, and I will talk to you guys soon.